first attempt at craft beer was stealing Red Rocket Ale from my stepdad and drinking it warm in a car on my way to Vegas, and it was terrible.
You're listening to the Bar and Restaurant Podcast, where hospitality lovers come to listen and learn with expert David DiLorenzo.
All right, we are back with another Bar and Restaurant Podcast, and I am here today with Arizona Wilderness. I'm here with Patrick. We just discussed.
Thanks for having me on.
I'm going to call him Patrick and not Pat today. But anyways, we've known each other for probably going on 4 or 5 years now. It's been a while or whatever, and I've watched your guys' journey during that time and a lot of the cool stuff that's gone on. And so today what I want to do is get into your story personally a little bit, a little bit of Arizona Wilderness, and then some stuff we can nerd out on a, let's just say, a business and personal wellness level as well.
We do that anyways.
I love it.
Right, when we hang out.
Yeah, we do. So this is just like having a conversation when we have one. So we're inside their warehouse. Tell me a little bit about where we're at right now and how this came to fruition.
Right. This was born out of a necessity in my brain and an advancement of kind of a style of beer that we think is kind of true to wilderness and the natural state of being of the landscapes in a beer form. Yeah. So we came up with a plan to go downtown Phoenix, realized that our current brew pub capacity needed to be grown a little bit to be able to service that demand, or at least we speculated that it needed to happen like that. Yeah. So there was a space in our pub that was full of all these barrels. It was super crammed. Frankly, it was probably unsafe. So it was a need that already had. I was looking for an option for that. So we were looking at warehouse space so that we could bring the barrels, less infrastructure needed in terms of glycol and all the brewery stuff. Right. But the idea behind this space was to maintain our mixed culture sour program. A lot of these barrels that you don't really know what they're going to be. Yeah. They just become what they are. Right. In time, and it's very much kind of art driven and palate driven. Yeah. So John Chaney, our cellar master in here, kind of controls and tracks each barrel individually, and then we collectively as a whole figure out what the intention and what the project's going to be. And generally these are 6 months to upwards of 3 years. Yeah. Each project. But you'll notice the large tanks and some of the stainless behind me, and that is added production space for just adding a basic draft beer. Are we allowed to swear on this?
You can do whatever the fuck you want. Yeah, absolutely.
One of the big ones is Don't Fuck It Up is a beer that we rolled out that's worked really well for us. It's got a conservation message, but essentially it was inspired by the rise of things like 805. Yeah. So honey blonde ale, local malt, local honey, but we can make that over here pretty easily. Yeah. And then create a ton of draft of something that moves. So it had this duality of function, as well as like perpetuating the spontaneous program. So that's essentially the idea behind this.
I absolutely love the passion and the behind the scenes of what really goes on here. And if you all are listening in your car right now and you have a chance to flip over to the YouTube and really see where we're sitting. Generally, I'll do the podcast inside of our podcast studios that I have up at my office. But this one I wanted to do because I had been here before and I knew that it had grown. And when you see the wood barrels and the metal and kind of the whole contrast, it really brings to light the story and what these guys are creating and what they've done. So that being said, when you look at Don't Fuck It Up and you look at all the different beers that you guys put together, listening and knowing you guys over the years and listening to the story that you've already told on several other podcasts and things like that, I relate you guys to the garage band, rock band that was, like Metallica in the garage days. And then all 100%. Of a sudden it's like the Black Album comes out and it's like, holy shit, what the hell just happened here? Right. And then you look at all your different beers that you do has like your next up and coming, LPs and records and all that. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah. Some of the projects in the queue that you're excited about. Yeah. But 100% on the garage band stuff. it was shoestring budget and Kickstarter, and the initial brewing setup and everything was definitely garage bandy,
right?
That took off, and then we had to run it as a garage band to service what was happening.
Totally.
And then the Black Album type of scenario would be more now, where we can create an experience that's consistent and something that it is the vision of what it's supposed to be, where in the past it was kind of grasping at trying to throw things forward that infrastructurally weren't set up for.
Yeah.
So, and we always we feel gratitude because people held on with us during those times when we made so many mistakes and created this kind of, sometimes it was, we didn't follow through that well with what we were saying. Hey, come check this out. Well, we only have a little minuscule amount of it, or, and so some people got upset. Now it's more like, okay, we have 100 barrels to choose from, and we don't necessarily need all of them to turn immediately because they're not going to go on tap soon.
Right.
It's like more intentful and slower process. And then that leads to a better customer facing experience where you can walk in and essentially choose your own journey of what you want in the beer world.
Yeah.
Right? You can deviate to lagers, to IPA, to fruited sour beer, like mixed culture beer.
Right.
You have a lot of options there, which was always my vision, is to be the do-it-all brewery, right? You have the repertoire to place in front of someone, and they will find something. They'll find their own way. And then recently we've brought on, local wine and some local spirits. So you kind of have, an overall experience versus this just maddening, we're just hitting the C chord or whatever and is jamming,
Yeah, now you're doing a little bit of the orchestra, and you're doing a little bit of, the acoustic and all that sort of stuff. And your catalog is just growing, and I would have to admit, are there some beers that have been here from the very beginning?
There are, yeah. A few of them that came out of John's garage. Actually, the reason that I accepted the idea of Wilderness and coming over was I tasted some of his homebrew when he was on the I call it like the 401k brewing system, where he took his wife's 401k and started brewing in the garage. But Refuge IPA is one of those, and like Superstition Coffee Stout, and even like the Pecan Pie Brown, which was funny because I was telling this story recently where I was taking the position and all the brewers over at Sandtown were like, whatever you do, man, just don't let them throw pecan pies in the beer. And now, brewers throw all kinds
everything.
of shit.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Oh, that is hilarious. And so everybody knows, John, who was not able to join us today, he's in a very awesome marketing meeting, which is cool. This is Patrick's partner. And so to kind of get into that, you guys had met. Let's get into your story first. So again, as I had mentioned before the podcast, you're a very hard person to find anything on. You've been known more as the introvert, and John's more of the extrovert.
Yep.
With me, you're very much extroverted because I just think we just kind of have that kinship, and we're able to pull it out in a lot of similarities. So this is great. I'm excited for the time with you alone. And 1990 is when you came to Arizona?
Yes.
Okay. Where were you born?
So I was born in Palo Alto, California.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And what was your childhood like? I mean, were you like a kid running around like playing superheroes? Were you out, digging in the dirt? What?
Well, it was a little bit of both. We moved to New Mexico, and we lived. My dad and my mom. We lived at the base of the Sandia Mountains. So through that, I did have some of that kind of, hiking
adventure.
But I was young. I was 4 or 5 years old. And then my parents split, and we came out to Phoenix.
Okay.
So then my upbringing was Ahwatukee. White suburbia, rotating background, everything looks the same. Yeah. But through that, my mom opened a retail shop in that like Ray and I-10 area.
Yeah.
And initially when we moved out there wasn't a whole lot. It was just a junkyard where the movie theater's at, and she had this little tiny boutique shop, which ended up growing in multiple locations. So that entrepreneur element was early on a part of my life. And so I worked in the shop and delivered, dried, trees and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I got that exposure as a child. And then, some of that like hiking stuff was more nostalgic for me.
That's good.
Which was a key to being a part of Wilderness.
I would assume you know the mountains over there in Ahwatukee really well. Like
yes, yeah, Desert Classic and South Mountain and whatnot.
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
very cool. Do you have any siblings?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. You're gonna hear some like CO2 and random brewery sounds.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect for the podcast. Yeah.
I have a younger brother.
Okay.
2.5 years younger, and he now is on the road doing what I call the millennial shuffle. So he's just living in a camper van.
I love it.
Hitched onto a CRV.
I love it.
And they're just going to national parks. And he moved out to DC recently, and then they're moving from DC back out west.
Yeah.
So they wanted to have this tour of the U.S. But we grew up together, and sports. He was a soccer player, and they ended up winning 2 state championships at Desert Vista. And he was the intelligent one of the two of us. So he was the straight A kid, scholarship, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Which kind of came around and bit him in the ass a little bit because
now he's on tour.
I was the guy who was 15, like I got a job, and then I got multiple jobs always, and just kind of the more of the grinder. Like it took me a little longer to learn things, and so I was a little more brazen in my approach to life, where I needed to hammer away at things.
Yeah.
Constantly.
You were learning life lessons.
To learn and and that's why I became a valuable asset to the brewing industry, because you need people like that can just hammer away and grind it out, especially in an up industry. Mm-hmm. And that's what my Santan experience was, where things just went insane growth-wise. Yeah. And we needed to service that demand and do it quickly.
And Santan was right before you had come over here, because wasn't John like courting you or like spying on you or trying to get you to get you in the garage?
Well, I guess, you don't want to put it in a nefarious way, but we were doppelgangers. We looked the same. We have a very similar appearance. The hair, beard, tall white guy, I guess is I don't know.
Right.
Just generically. So people thought we were the same person, and that led us together. Which is very fateful in a way.
Yeah.
It's a very strange, like, was this meant to happen? I don't know. Of
course it was. Yeah.
How that, because we weren't friends before, there wasn't, and we're both the opposite. We're the yin and yang of the whole situation, and we flop back and forth, and sometimes, I yang and he yins. Typically it's the other way around. I'm more yin driven, but that's why our partnership works very well in a business context.
And I can completely relate to that, because my business partner, he's the yin to my yang. He's more of the introvert. He's very much like read things and analyze it, and more of the chemist, scientist, that sort of thing, if that's such a thing in insurance. But, it is, and it's worked out for 20 years. So I can completely relate to that sort of thing. And I'm sure your guys' fights, if any, are few and far between, because you're good.
Yeah, and they've certainly changed over the years. Yeah. Now it's more just a matter-of-fact discussion, whereas before they were a little bit more heated and a little bit more strenuous, and probably more publicly displayed, because we had issues coming on us every single day that needed to be tackled, and we both probably weren't in a space where we were able to rationally take those on. So that was probably challenging for people around us even at that point. But that's where quick growth can be a little bit of a struggle. Just growth in general is a struggle, or just running a small business, starting a small business.
Experience, maturity, all that stuff just comes into play. That and you all are kind of that. Again, that hit band that came out of the garage, and just all of a sudden it's like, it's like the rapper that all of a sudden has the entourage and, all this stuff in front of him. And it's like, whoa, how did I get here?
100%. Yeah. I would have never in a million years, even from the get-go, coming over from Santan and working with John, would have said, we're going to travel the world with this thing. We're going to have a TV show, and all of the things that have happened are mind-blowing to me. I still live in this space of how did this become this? I don't really understand it.
And you're still one of the most grounded people that I know, and I love that about you. Getting back into, so you went to ASU. I went there as well. I went there for one reason. That was to look at girls. It wasn't necessarily to get a degree. You know, like you having that entrepreneurial spirit. It wasn't like college. Yeah, hell yeah.
Right.
So I know that you went there, you got your degree, quote unquote, as you would say, barely. But you got it, right?
Yeah, piece of paper.
Yeah, but through that, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had put together a class on brewing. Is that?
Yeah. Well, I won't take credit for putting the class together, but the inspiration behind the class was driven by my engagement in brewing through my core major, which was interdisciplinary studies, but essentially if you flunked out of business school, like they sent you over here, and that's what happened to me. Right. It was like, these accounting classes are insane. How is a human being supposed to understand this? So I got pushed over there, which is great because it led me to the late great David Kahns, who was my professor throughout those years. And the major was nice because it allowed you to basically deviate whatever direction you wanted to go. Because interdisciplinary studies can be anything.
Yeah.
So beer is a great substrate in that there's technology, science, art, history, whatever you want to apply to beer, you can. And so any subject matter that we were focused on in that class, I just brought it back to what my focus was. I wanted to be a part of the brewing industry.
Yeah.
And I was kind of a brewery rat server throughout college. So my first job was Streets of New York.
Brewing,
which was a crazy place. And, you know, Zach, who I think went to Sonoran, I don't know where he brews now, but they were brewing and trying to brew with like household cleaning chemicals because it was kind of a corporate brew pub type thing.
Right.
It was just not great. The beer was I mean, it had problems. And so it was, as a server, you walked in like, okay, which beer's bad? Which one tastes good today? Or not that bad?
Which one doesn't taste like Everclear or Johnson & Johnson?
Or just some asinine like off flavor that now you would go, I wouldn't drink one thing. But they made some good beers here and there, and so you had to know what that was walking into the joint.
And getting into that, I mean, that was really your first discovery and love for kind of creating beer and doing all that?
Yeah, I think we all have our craft beer journey, right? And my first attempt at craft beer was stealing Red Rocket ale from my stepdad and drinking it warm in a car on my way to Vegas. And it was terrible. Like, it was the worst experience I've ever, but you know, the buzz and all the things. And so I went straight from high school, you know, Coors Light parties to working at Streets of New York and having IPA. And so I didn't have that transition. I need an entry-level beer, and let's ease our way into this. It was like, no, I drink IPA now. And then from that point on, I was looking at the industry and just really enjoyed the idea of it.
Yeah.
And then I discovered homebrewing, you know. And once you discover that, then you get the bug, and
it's
like, how do I get in this thing?
Yeah. Well, you bring up when you talk about the beer, you know, and you're drinking in the car. When I was 19, 20, I was going to Casey Moore's. You know, no ID checks back then, and I was drinking Franzenskanner, the Hefeweizen
wine.
No, the Hefeweizen that they had with the monk on it.
Yeah,
and
I'm
just
thinking Franzia or something.
Yeah, just to have that like in a cold glass, you know, at the time,
yeah.
I was like, I mean, that was like craft beer back then. Because you know, I'm 46, so maybe a few years on you when I went to ASU or whatever, but there weren't any breweries really, you know, during in 96, 95, you know, during
Four
that
Peaks
time.
was just getting started back
then. Yeah.
Well, even when I went, there wasn't a ton of options. I mean, you had Four Peaks. I think Santana was just getting going, you know, that time. So they weren't distributing a whole lot. There wasn't a ton of options.
No, there wasn't.
And there wasn't a ton of opportunity in the industry to get a job.
No.
And so that was the hard part for me because I wanted to get in desperately. This was like my thing. Like, I want to get in and do this. And I graduated in 2008, so it was the worst time in human history to try to get a job.
Right.
So I was like, I'm going to learn a craft, you know, something that'll stick with you forever. And so I worked at Gordon Biersch there on Mill.
That's right.
And worked under Dieter Dieter Jürgen Klaus Forstner, you know,
Love
crazy
it.
German guy, Cheech and Chong tattooed
Right.
on his chest. But you know, it was a one-man show. They didn't have a job for me. I wanted one. And so I was like, well, I'll do this for free. I'm interning. My internship was there, and I'll just keep doing it. But then I've learned now through owning a business that there are these corporate rules, and to have someone in a brewery that you're not paying is a liability.
Yeah.
And we're talking insurance. That's a problem.
Yep.
But back then, to me, so they said, hey, we can't have you do this. That was the, crushing blow to me.
Yeah.
That was a crushing blow. Like, you can't work in the brewery. Like, I don't want to work here. I don't want to do this.
Right. Yeah. I'm not going to wash dishes.
Well, I was a server, but I was like, I don't want to serve tables forever.
Yeah.
And so that was a moment where, can't do it. Well, I guess I'm going to go float around in the ether till I find my way.
And then did you find Santan after that?
Yeah, after getting, doing pyramid scams through job career fairs,
We all
and
did
and everyone has a similar story to that, or
Yeah.
at least, like my brother and some of my good friends are selling meat out of the back of a van, or my brother started as a roofer at Sun Valley Solar, so he was just picking roofs and, riding his bike down there, and that's where
Hustling.
you
Yeah.
hustle, man. And Santan was that for me. You come in, you make minimum wage, but they give you some low fills, some defective beer, and you're happy.
Yeah.
And I always looked at it like that.
It's like your own chemistry set. You're like, yes. So you get on.
Well, sort of. I mean, it's industrial manufacturing.
Yeah.
Is what it is, and that's one of the realizations that people have to take into account. Where
Right.
when you get into brewing, it does look glorious from the exterior, and when you get into it, it's like mechanized. It's just operating machinery and understanding some principles. So you're not exactly like digging into some deep level of chemistry, especially at a base level entry position.
Yeah.
You're packaging beer, you're just slamming tops on and moving cases, moving kegs around, breaking your back, basically. And that's a phase where I think everyone who gets into beer should go through that phase just to know how it works. But that is a brutal phase.
Well, I think just within any industry, there's a lot of glamorization when people look at things and they're like, oh my God, this restaurant or this company, or you guys are doing so great, or this and that. And again, it's the old caveat that a lot of times people don't see the inner workings and the struggle and how long it takes to get to that point. And, getting into your guys' travels and the things that you're doing and the invites that you've gotten. And I want to talk a little bit about, that, because it's extraordinary, but it's not like you guys just started going and doing that. You earned your right to go do this sort of stuff and then bring it back to help grow your brand. So let's talk about a few of your trips. I know the Jordan trip was a big one.
Yeah.
And I know that's a repetitive story for you, but I would love for my audience to kind of hear a little bit about how that came about. And didn't you have a film crew with you on that one?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah. To kind of give the backstory of that travel, because from the outset, looking in, you do say, well, how are you afford to do all these things, and how does this work? And, granted, we did invest a little bit as a company to get John and I to move around and do some of these things. But generally speaking, these invitational only festivals, they will take care of a lot of the expenses for you.
Yeah.
Just by bringing special product. Like, that's kind of, you're bartering almost for that experience. And so John and I's strategy was, well, if we're being invited to this thing in Copenhagen, then if we're going to fly all the way over there, let's do something else. So let's jump off from there. Usually it's through London, and then go do this project over here.
Yeah.
So every time we would go over the pond, we would strategize how to do that, or see something new, or get a little bit more out of it. We went to Austria in one of the trips, and that inspired the beer garden downtown. And so you have these elements, but the Jordan project specifically was one that was John influenced, idea of putting together content in this documentary style that would be viable for a network to pick up, or some way of Anthony Bourdain-esque within a beer context. And we, at the time, we had already seen it with Brewdog doing their show. But before that, even just inspiration for our brewery was Brewmasters, the show that Sam Calagione put out through Discovery. And that inspired John to kind of go the direction we did with our brewery.
Right.
So he had seen those things and was inspired to make something ourselves.
Yeah.
And so this was kind of a pro bono proof of concept for that. And we knew a brewery owner there in Jordan.
Okay.
He is the only craft brewery in Jordan. And, you know, with a lot of the population not even drinking alcohol, you're basically selling it to expats or military base.
Very niche.
Yeah. Small. And just to have the, you know, the capital to be able to do it in that country is insane.
Water conservation, I would assume, too.
Well, and that, too.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't even have water available at the brewery.
Right.
It has to come in via truck.
Oh, my God.
So, you know, some of the things that we saw at that brewery were just wild. This truck comes in, and it's got to pump the water in for you. And, you know, Jordan and surrounding cities, wars have been fought over water, and there's water rationing. You know, water comes in once a week. It's in these tanks on all the roofs, and you have to know that that's how much you have. Which is wild to think about. We take water for granted here a lot of times, and have more. I mean, even in these large cities like Phoenix, we think there's just kind of unlimited resource of water.
And even especially this year with like no monsoons. I mean, basically no rain. It's like
not a lot of aquifers filling up. So this truck pulls up to fill up their brewery needs, and there's a hose with just water just shooting out everywhere, just shooting. And John and I looked at Yazan, the brewery owner, and said, Yazan, is that supposed to happen? Is that a problem? And he's like, it's just a thing here. If I say something to him, he won't show up next week. So this is just how it is. And, you know, so there were a lot of stories like that where, you know, he went to get his first grain out of his mash and didn't know what to do with it. So he talked to a farmer, and the guy showed up in a miniature school bus with the seats taken out, and they took, you know, all the grain and just shoveled it in the back of the school bus. Wow. You know, and so like there's a lot of infrastructural things that are really strange.
It makes you really appreciate what we have here in the States.
Yes, it provides context 100%, traveling and understanding at a non-tourist level.
Right.
And that's what is so beautiful about the TV show and some of the opportunities that we were able to engage in is these were local people that lived there, ran businesses. We didn't get the, hey, stay in a resort and we're going to make this Americanized for you so that you're just kind of on a beach. No. We went to Dominican Republic and saw things and saw trash and, you know, the Haitian issues. And so that was more empowering to the mind than would some of the other experiences that you could have in those travel. Yeah.
And you've been to all sorts of, obviously, probably everywhere in the United States that we can think of. And I know Jordan's probably, is Jordan like I don't know, maybe the most creative one that you've been to as far as, or outskirt one or?
Yes, though last December, I think it was, January, John and I went to Greenland.
Did you? Okay.
And Greenland was certainly out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very unique.
I remember seeing some of those pictures, like of the ice and all that stuff. Yes. It's beautiful, right?
But I would say Jordan being one of the more kind of foreign places to go.
Right.
And a lot more culturally different.
Yeah.
Where it's not just white people everywhere and they don't all speak English, you know, and so yeah, that was a good one. The Jordan, and just generally being an American in kind of a Middle Eastern space is different. Really changes the way you look at, you know, just how roads and things function and like the water infrastructure, and food, and the whole function. Like eating process works very communal, like ongoing, long, drawn out, and they just, you know, that was or utensils, like not using utensils as much, and it's just
that's cool.
You learn some things, and I was actually mistaken for Jesus, or at least a symbol of Jesus.
Oh, right on.
when we went to a small town called Madaba, and it's like outside of Jordan, and there's this really, really old church that's built around this mosaic, and I had been wearing my Earth Runner sandals.
Oh yeah,
so
those are the best.
those like copper connectivity sandals.
Yep.
And I had lost the group, so I was just kind of standing outside, and we had gotten the
awesome.
headdress, like the traditional headdress, over me, and a group of people from India actually this was 20 or 30 people.
Yeah.
Swarmed me.
This is the best story
And they
ever.
were all taking pictures of me. And me not
God.
being particularly religious, it was a little overwhelming, but
Yeah.
I accepted the energy and said, okay,
course,
yeah,
yeah,
let's
it's
come in
beautiful.
and we'll take photos together. And the strangest part about it all was John and team had found me and got a few photos. Like, this is a really random situation.
Yeah.
It's very strange. But this older man came up to me afterward, this tall, older man, and said, hey, can I take a photo with you? And he had a little bit of an accent, like it was a Danish English accent.
Yeah.
And we took a photo together, and we ended up posting that online. And we had just come from Copenhagen. The Danes said, hey, that guy is Jacob Holt. He's a Pulitzer Prize award-winning photographer who lived in the slums in the U.S. in the 80s and documented a bunch of things. So it was just very...
So he thought you were Jesus too and wanted a picture.
I think he was just kind of taken aback by this energy and what was going on.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's absolutely beautiful. Did you get free lunch out of it?
I don't know if I particularly got lunch for that, but
what a cool experience and amazing story. I absolutely love that. I had actually been mistaken for Jesus in high school when I looked pretty much like you back then. And then because I was in the music business, so I was like, fuck it, I don't care, And then believe it or not, when Maverick Records, which was Madonna's record label at the time, hired me, they had asked me to get a haircut. Go figure that out, right?
So the record company made you cut your hair to be a part of the record company?
Totally.
That opens your eyes to the way that music and the corporate element to music.
Yeah.
It's not just creativity and everyone's...
No, they're like, we need some business, whatever. And I'm like, okay. So it was Madonna's company, so I did it. Anyways, growing the hair back out now, as we had talked. So that's awesome. Okay, so you do all this traveling. I would assume this year, just due to circumstances, traveling's gone down a little bit. You've had some more time.
Traveling's gone.
Yeah, it's pretty much gone.
I mean, localized travel.
Yeah.
John and I have been able to get out to wilderness areas quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that travel exists, obviously, and it's safe and whatnot, but everything else has been toast, which has actually been very helpful.
So let's segue into that, because I want to talk about wilderness as a living and breathing organism. I mean, it's not just a brewery and restaurant that you go in and eat and drink. It's an actual living organism where people can come in and experience your guys' journeys and your travels and the things that you bring back. So you guys do a lot of backpacking and camping and hiking, and John takes some of the most beautiful pictures I've ever seen.
100%.
Yeah, shares all that stuff. So tell me a little bit about just the overall idea in your head when you go out into these journeys, and what, besides just, camping and getting into nature and bringing ingredients back for beers and stuff. Just tell the audience a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think there's there's a philosophical, spiritual relationship to being outdoors that we try to, not only through the work that we do with the brewery, but personally engaging in that, because for my philosophy is, if you see a direction you want to move or an identity that you want to encapsulate and share with others, you need to live that yourself first on a personal level, to see if it truly is something that is viable to share with others. And I think that wilderness engagement is helpful for that, and it's also, it breeds a level of humility in oneself, especially when you contest the power of nature and you walk up that ridge that gets a lightning storm and you weren't completely prepared. These are moments where Mother Nature does not give a shit about you.
Nope.
And that's okay. That's respect for the land and the earth itself. And then some of the initiatives that we put forth, it really frames those and puts them into a space where you have this relationship with the earth, and it gives you your why as to why would you make these sacrifices and do the things you're doing. For us, it would be specific to some of the conservation value of our malt that we use, the Sinagua malt story, and the idea that you're saving water, for rivers, right? And the beauty and the natural serenity of that river space and that free wild space is something that those have gone away and been really degraded over the years. Industrial America has stripped the land severely. So coming in contact with that land gives you that frame of reference to want to fight for it and care about it a little bit more.
Absolutely beautiful.
So that helps us. And for John, like John's a creatively driven person. So for photography, for him, that is a creative outlet.
Yeah.
And that's an element for him to express his creativity through the natural landscapes and the beauty and the kind of unforeseen circumstance of what a sunset could provide. And it's an excitement value for him where he wants to stay on the ridge and get struck by lightning as long as he gets the shot. And so when him and I do it together, we have a different relationship with it, but we get something both out of it personally. I enjoy the physical aspect of it as well.
Right.
Where there is some harsh,
you're pushing yourself.
Struggle. Yeah.
Yeah.
And adding beyond just getting out of the truck and walking a mile and taking a sunset photo. No, let's go on a journey that is going to test us a little bit.
It's amazing, people. Like, John's Instagram, we'll share all this in show notes or whatever, but you have to check out the photos and what they do and how it lends back into the brewery. It's so cool when it pops up on my feed to see that. And I'm sure John would too, consider himself more of an Arizonan now than an Ohioan, probably.
100%.
Because of what he's able to bring.
Yeah, and that's the whole identity of the brewery was based on that connection.
Yeah.
That neuroelectronic synapse that John felt when he went to a wilderness space, saw the sign, read essentially the Wilderness Act, right? To be kind of unmolested by man and in its natural way is the idea that we brought to beer. We don't filter these things. We allow them to express themselves. Granted, we do curate, we guide the products and the beer and have intent behind it. But, that's why big beer was initially like the enemy. It's the corporate, it's the man, because it was this mechanized thing.
Right.
And so kind of weird because craft has grown
so
big, and a lot of the craft has been mechanized at this point. So.
Well, at this point, like, what is big beer? What is the definition,
Well, and corporate beer has kind of won that battle where they've convoluted it and the lines have been blurred where I don't think a lot of consumers really care or know or, is Four Peaks local? Well, they sure say it is in all their billboards for the past 5 years since they've been bought. So
people are still drinking, So you're doing so this year you've been doing a lot of the camping and the hiking and all that stuff, which is amazing. And then has that fluctuates into what you use in your ingredients locally, what you use even, in your food, a lot of the locally sourced, just farmers out here and the cattle and all that sort of, that's huge. And I get it, owning restaurants myself, knowing what what your margins are, which are basically nothing. You're literally doing this out of a passion and out of a love to get Arizona based stuff to the people.
Yes. Yeah. We have those discussions. The margin discussions are hard.
Yeah.
And we did from in a business context, we brought in a COO to help us manage some of those elements of our business, because we generally, we have a decent idea of how things sell and what to price things at, but it's more of like a gut feeling than an actual analytical feedback element. It's not, John and I aren't going to build spreadsheets, we're not those kinds of entrepreneurs. So in that space, these are more driven by our, you think about it from an environmental standpoint, a locality standpoint, and then there's a health and wellness standpoint as well for some of for instance, like grass-raised beef, right? And we understand the value and benefit of that. And also the idea that you can take where you're at and know you have a long way to go, like to get to where your goal is. And some of the inspirational books we've read, Let My People Go Surfing, Yvon Chouinard, Patagonia, and understanding those principles, and then the way that you're going to have a greater effect overall in the world based on what you're doing, what you're putting out there.
Yeah.
Right. So are you just getting, some beef that comes from the Midwest and it comes on a truck and a semi and fuel to get it here, and it's got hormones injected into it.
Well, people don't know what they don't know, And
yes, and that's where you are framing. I have an intelligent, intuitive consumer.
Yeah.
Restaurant goer who does value these things, and so for us, we've had to learn the process of R&D and the process of, hey, all right, for a while we're gonna have a beef upgrade on the menu. It's gonna say, here's Arizona grass-raised beef. Here's why it's great. We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna have that conversation.
Yeah.
And then the consumer's gonna come in and vote with their dollar. And our end goal is, hey, we're gonna be 100% this.
Right.
And we've finally reached that at this point. But it was a phased process, along with the Sinagua malt journey, which was, okay, they're going to put a test plot down in the Verde Valley, and we're going to take that test plot and we're going to use it for a batch of beer, see if it even tastes like anything good, or how did it grow in that test plot. And so that was, it was a few-year experiment.
It's cool.
That then ended up working out, and then honing in those principles and getting better at growing with those companies.
Right.
And that's what we kind of believe, that it makes Arizona greater in the end when you have these small local farms and grain purveyors and local cattle ranchers that now are, you have a relationship where they're growing with you. As our company grows, they grow. And that's a challenge. I mean, navigating that relationship and understanding the size of a company and whether they're able to service your demand, or if they're too big for you, and when we were smaller, there were companies that were better, where you get a handful of ingredients, throw it in, and now you've made this beer. Oh, now we need 10 times that amount. That producer may not be
able to produce
one unless they've, we've grown with them over the way.
Yeah. And you've helped a lot of companies grow in that sense. And I'm sure with, the good experiments there have been 10 that you've just learned from that are like, yeah, that ain't gonna work. Which is great. Yes. You guys are doing all this, obviously, for your love and for your, building of a company, but also for the people that come out and come to your place and want to enjoy something that, is authentic and from Arizona. That's huge. There's not everybody's doing it, and that's why you guys are so successful.
Well, and it's hard to scale.
Very hard, yeah.
We have conversation with local restaurateurs,
I have those same conversations.
Works in a cafe, maybe a 25-seat place, because you can only get so many turns, or in somewhere where the price point can be elevated, and that's okay. You know? So because when you mechanize it us, all of a sudden it's you're gonna go through 50,000+ pounds of beef in a year. Okay, so that price point, whether it's per pound, if it's $1 difference, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate that? Because either we internalize it and make less money, which tends to happen a lot, which frustrates the money guy. But to us, we kind of look at it like we don't traditionally market.
Yeah.
We use social media and do some things. So that budget that would live there then goes into the product. So if we tell the story well enough, then it all works out, is the business philosophy. Whether that plays out in the end, I mean,
it's okay. You're having fun and you're doing what you love. I mean, at the end of the day,
you have to be profitable. You got to make a business work. And so that's a big discussion that we have, especially recently with COVID, and because it changes the game. You have the shutdowns and stuff, and you're like, oh, cool. So our not great margin product got slashed, and then Uber took half of it, and you're like,
that's all good points. And your guys' love for, so you have 2 locations now. The one in downtown is what, 3 years old?
2?
Is it 2 years old? Okay, time's flying. and you're not quick to really expand like you see a lot of other businesses go location. You're very, I would say, calculated in the essence that to like what you're talking about here, to really duplicate on a quality level what you guys do is a lot, and you want to make sure that your purveyors and everybody else is in line with you to do that. That also being said, my through my inner workings with you guys, I know that you keep all your employees and you take care of them and keep them, and so it's almost like a family unity that you guys have together that I think is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, you try, because obviously the service industry,
Right.
that the turn on that is pretty huge. But the core group is, generally sticking around for, and what we like to do is add in wilderness elements to what their lifestyle is and their job.
Yeah.
Where, and they're not, to go camping with us and pick spruce tips is not a requirement, but a lot of times everyone goes because it's fun, and we'll provide everything for them, and they just have to show up and enjoy it.
I'm so going one of these times.
Yeah,
That'd
absolutely.
be a blast. I'm such a coward to go camping on my own because I have no equipment, so I'm gonna go with you guys.
Oh, I mean, we've gotten a lot better at it. The cool ship experience that we've done.
Yeah.
Definitely learned how to scale camping a little bit.
Right.
Because when you have 20 or 30 people out there, you need a way to like cook food for them all. And
For sure. Yeah. No, that's
all
cool. Well, let's bounce that into health and wellness, because that's one of my passions, and it is interrelated with food and hospitality. And you and I have really clicked on, everything from the running aspect of things to eating healthy to, I believe you're still gardening, or your wife is. Is that?
Yeah. I'm gardening.
Yeah. So you're doing all that sort of stuff. So let's start with
eggplant right now. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Let's start with your daily journey of biking to work. So
yeah.
people got to know this. So how many miles a day do you bike to work out, when you do?
Yeah. So I try to get, a couple days a week, back and forth, which I think it's 50 miles round trip.
Okay.
So what I did was, before, when I was working at Santan, I had a road bike, and I would ride from Tempe to Chandler and back. And, that was solid, but then and it was also physical labor all day.
Yeah.
So that was kind of insane to do that, but I was definitely mindset way more insane back then. Now I'm a little more quantified, and but I got a pedal assist bike, so you can kind of set that at a higher level or a lower level depending.
Yeah.
And it's meant to get rid of your car. It's like a commuter bike if you wanted to reduce your carbon footprint, or just like get outside and get some vitamin D.
And are you all canal from?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean,
perfect.
From my spot. Yeah. I'm in that like Arcadia Light area, so I can hit Canal, and then you just pop through Tempe, and then on the Western Canal Path.
It's awesome.
So yeah, I mean, that's been great. And what I want to do is do a run, the Forrest Gump run on like Halloween.
Cool.
And go from like the Wilderness Gilbert to Wilderness Downtown.
Oh, I love it.
So that would be fun to do together.
Yeah.
If you're,
Let me know.
down.
We'll wear the crazy hair shirt and go.
Yeah.
I'll wear a wilderness shirt and you wear my shirt. We'll do that. No, that'd be fun. And I think part of the camping expedition too is like, I'm sure you probably go trail running and do all that sort of stuff. So and do you do it in your sandals, or do you wear running shoes?
So so my logic running wise has changed quite a bit.
Has it? Okay.
Yeah, because I've done it like these are kind of minimalistic shoes, and the Earth Runners, like I've done it in Earth Runners as well. But I started to ramp up quite a bit, and when you ramp up, you realize the amount of impact that you are taking can be pretty intense, and so I ended up recently giving my IT band some issues. So I've changed my mindset a little bit there into more of, hey, I want to be able to do this more and maybe go further. So let's make the impact a little lower.
Did you get Hoka's?
I did. Yeah. The kind of cushiony.
Big cushiony. Space foam shoes. Yeah.
Yep.
And I made that move probably right around, I think you're a few years behind me, so probably right around you making it now, because I was the same way. I was wearing the Vibrams. I was trying to run barefoot, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I could feel just the detrimental damage it was doing to my IT and all that sort of stuff. And I'm kind of like, you know what? this technology is probably there for a reason, and I do want to do it a lot longer. And you know, my weekly runs are now down to 25 miles as opposed to running 100 miles a week.
Yeah.
And I just do it quicker and more intense, and it's a meditation. I'm sure. Talk to me a little bit about maybe your mindset for running. Is that where you meditate? Do you sit down and meditate? Like, how do you get your?
Yeah, I try to just have a traditional like meditation practice on a daily,
Awesome.
before coffee. But I do believe that running is a form of meditation.
Yeah.
And there are epiphany ideas that come to my brain, and just a slow flowing, theanine state that happens in that, especially when it's steady state and you're not just like charging like crazy. You're just like this repetitive motion and staying with that, whether it be pain or enjoyment or whatever, just staying with that. And yeah, the running has certainly perpetuated that idea of just kind of going through that flow and not getting too sucked away in some emotional direction one way or the other.
Quieting the mind and doing all that stuff. And I don't see you being being too attached to your phone or that much social media or that. You just kind of do.
Well, recently, I don't know if you've seen the documentary just came out that's kind of on fire, The Social Dilemma.
Yeah, I saw it on Netflix last night.
Yeah, that was one that, even me, I go, oh, okay, is this affecting me? I mean, these algorithms, I knew they were happening and they were doing things. So I just put a phone tracker on to see what I'm looking at, how often, and what the averages are. And so that was helpful, 'cause I'm generally like below quite a bit.
Yeah.
But even so, I look at that and go, yeah, I could probably reduce this phone.
I think there's good and bad and all that sort of stuff. And while I look at that documentary and I say it's interesting, I also know that there's a lot of good that can come out of social media. And I think for people such as yourself and myself that are positive and want to motivate and give love out there, that can be a good thing for social media to spread that, as opposed to spreading just stuff that why. Yeah. So
the polarizing stuff.
Right. I mean, I don't read the news. I don't do any of that. But if I'm out running and I want to share that with people and be like, hey, come on out, or share that energy, and one person can get a goodness from that, then that's where I think social media is huge.
And I'm sure you've probably dug into David Goggins, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, you can't hurt me. How many people has that touched and changed their lives in a positive way? So there are elements of whether a book or media that can be very helpful and useful. Yeah. I mean, because that was a doom and gloom documentary. That
it was
for the social dilemma.
But that's what makes it captivating, right? So, one other thing on health and wellness, as far as just your eating regimen, do you eat a lot out of your garden? Do you eat at the restaurant? I mean, obviously, you probably eat good quality stuff when you do, and you're cognizant of that. Are you a faster? Are you?
Yeah. So I try to stay out of the extremes when it comes to all of these things, because I've done that in the past.
Right.
When I think you all do, like, especially if you get super into health and wellness. John and I, to kind of roll back, we've been on a little bit of a journey ourselves where we opened the brewery, burgers and beers and IPAs, and the whole mindset around health and wellness wasn't really a thing for us.
Right.
I always kind of exercised and was moderate, but it was a big influx of the calories and what was going on, and alcohol, and we both gained a ton of weight.
Yeah.
I mean,
you're lean now.
I'm lean now, but I was at my height almost 220.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was,
well, it's not huge. I mean, you're what, 6'1"?
Yeah. 6 foot. Yeah.
What do you weigh now?
And it was like kind of just thick guy thing. I weigh like 175 is like my natural body weight, lean. Like good spot for me to be. But John went up too, and like when we started the brewery, he was under 200 pounds. He went up to 250.
Okay. And
there were some moments where we went to go skydiving, and they wouldn't allow him to go because they didn't have someone big enough. And that was, he said, the minute that happened, he said, I'm running a marathon. And he did it.
That's great.
And he ran a marathon. Granted, he didn't lose a lot of weight because his lifestyle was still similar when he was doing that. But at that point, I looked down because they weighed me too, and I was like, ooh, I've never been this heavy before. What's going on? Maybe I should consider my lifestyle, what's happening here with all this travel and eat, drink, whatnot. And so I went on that journey to get back and get to a more reasonable level. And through that, I found things like, I don't know if you've ever followed Ben Greenfield, but Ben does some crazy stuff.
Yep.
Like off the wall biohacker shit.
Yep, I love it.
And so I engaged in some of that, and I think I took it too far and was trying to do keto things.
I did that with Dave Asprey's stuff. I mean,
really? Yeah. Yeah, and some of it was just too much. It was like a shotgun approach where I was like, I'm going to try this, and this. And you're like, well, if you're quantifying your body as a somewhat of an experiment,
right,
then you would not want to change all the variables all the time. And
I think you would agree that when it comes to doing that sort of thing, having an intuitive conversation with your body after you put something into it, and then realizing what that reaction is, how it feels your body, and what goes on, and that's different for everybody. It's like, okay, if I can eat this hamburger bun and it doesn't destroy me, might not be the worst thing. Might want to avoid gluten, might not, but it's just all those certain things. Or some people might not do well with nuts. I know with me, it's these oils. When I go out, if canola oil, or even if it was a canola oil, olive oil mix, it cranks my stomach.
Oh yeah.
And so I think a lot of people have gotten lost in the translation of listening to their body because they get so used to feeling just logged down, and then it's like, give me that cup of coffee to get me back up. But
it's so amazing because when you haven't seen the other side, then you wouldn't know.
Wouldn't even know. Yeah.
Right? And then once you do see the other side, you go, why doesn't everybody do this? And so that's a conversation that has popped up in my mind. And then there are other elements where on that journey, you have to learn things on that journey.
Yeah.
And some of them are just, it's at the base state. Exercise and eating better is the thing, right? Like just eat less and exercise more and whatever. But there are a lot of other factors there,
right?
Like the spirituality factor
100%.
And some of these things, restorative elements.
Mm-hmm.
I've recently gotten onto this Whoop thing, and I love it because it's about recovery.
Okay,
it's a fitness tracker that doesn't do anything but focus on, are you recovered enough to perform? And because I'm always an overdoer,
so am I.
I just go too hard. I David Goggins the shit out of it, and then I break myself.
So I just found Stretch Lab, which is a place that you lay down there and they stretch you out, which is good for like a recovery day. I can share that with you afterwards, but it's amazing. They stretch out my IT band. You literally lay there and they strap you to bed. It's absolutely amazing. And then they just stretch you out for an hour. So, and I love that you say recovering, you bring all that up, because a lot of people, including myself, that are type A and just go full out like David Goggins' method, it's not healthy for us.
No.
We think it is because in our mind we're like we're doing more, but we're actually doing less and tearing apart and all that sort of stuff.
Breaking everything down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to, so I could go on hours with you. But in the meantime, I just want to ask you some quick fire questions.
Sure.
All right. These will be a lot of fun. I hope. Would you rather have a Prius or a Volkswagen Beetle?
Prius or a Beetle? What kind of Beetle? Are we talking like
the old
buggy?
bug? Yeah.
I'd say back in the day I would have chosen Beetle because I was doing biodiesel experiments. But probably nowadays Prius because it's electric. I would love to have an electric truck. That would be my vision for the future of.
I think you're getting closer.
Yeah.
What would you rather experience? And I'm sure you've experienced one of these: a rattler or a bear?
Bear. Bears are generally pretty scared of you. So rattler is like. That's actually one of my fears, man. It's like stepping on a rattlesnake.
Yeah. That's why I don't camp sometimes.
Yeah, like backpacking alone. Probably that's one of my things. I'm like, what if I get bit by a rattler?
Yeah.
It's not good.
And then you're out there in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
What do you think you're more prone to see? Sasquatch or aliens?
Aliens.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Would you rather camp in the Arctic cold or Death Valley?
Arctic cold. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm a hot sleeper, so.
Are you?
So I could probably handle the heat a lot better.
I'm more of a Death Valley guy. I actually want to run out in Death Valley at night. I think it'd be just cool scenery, like being on Mars or something.
Oh yeah.
Metallica or Dr. Dre?
Metallica.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cheetos or Doritos?
Cheetos.
You didn't hesitate there. Read a book in a hammock or go fishing?
Probably a book and a hammock. Yeah.
Would you rather eat worms or crickets?
Crickets.
Okay.
I think I have eaten crickets.
How many push-ups can you do continuously?
Not that many. I actually tore my left pectoral.
Oh, no.
So, probably 20.
About 20? Okay.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, would you rather have an hour beard massage or head massage?
Depends on who from. I feel like a beard massage is really intimate.
Yeah, totally. Your wife.
Beard massage.
Beard massage.
Yeah, but the head would be whoever.
Those are the
or
best.
A machine or whatever.
Yeah, those machine heads.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Patrick, I'm gonna go Patrick. Thank you so much for hanging out. Yeah, this was really cool. I think people are gonna absolutely love it. Where can people? I mean, do you have social media you want to share, or as far as?
Yeah. AZ Wilderness on Instagram. We have our downtown Phoenix location on there as well, and I would probably put a plug for our beer delivery, azwbeershop.com, because we're delivering beer now due to some of the COVID stuff, which has opened up some new opportunities for us to get our beer out there. So.
Yeah, which is amazing. And do you still have the Arizona Wilderness Humans?
Yes,
okay.
The Wilderness Humans.
Okay.
I think John added life to the end of it.
And that's on Instagram, right?
Yeah, that's more the kind of lifestyle stuff. John generally runs it, but I'll get a post in there once in a while when I'm feeling
when you're feeling
savvy. But that's just him and me. That's
and I remember running into you in the airport when I was flying to New York a couple of years ago. I think you were going to North Carolina or something like that. And I just happened to run into you, and it was just so funny. And you were like my most successful post for the month. It was just out of sheer I don't know what's it called, not synergy, but how you just kind of run into people.
Yeah.
So
and then our rainy Desert Botanical Gardens day, that was fun.
That was great. That was awesome. So, all right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Bar and Restaurant Podcast. Please go in, and if you subscribe, we're going to be doing a contest for you to be able to win some really cool stuff that we're getting from some local restaurants here. Please share it with your friends if you enjoy it. Give us a 5-star because you love us. And I want to thank Bar and Restaurant Insurance, my company, for sponsoring it, along with my media company, Local 480, who's done an amazing job putting all this together. And until next time, we'll check you guys out later. Peace.